just maybe a brief summary of what's just happened to you and what's going to happen to you in the next 3 days, maybe the next 3 years, and if you're lucky, maybe the next 30 years, which seems unimaginably long to most of you. How many of you are engineers? You can admit it. Go ahead. How many of you are artists? How many of you are engineers who are artists? How many of you are artists who are engineers? I just want to tell you something which at least the artists will understand, and hopefully you'll all understand by the time I'm done talking. Artists hear things that others don't, and particularly composers. Anybody know who this guy is? Yeah, who is it? Beethoven, yeah, Beethoven. What I didn't realize is that by the time Beethoven composed the Ninth Symphony, he was stone deaf. Deaf. Couldn't hear a thing. But in his head, he was still hearing the music. And the result was the world got Beethoven's Ninth. About 500 years ago, in Italy, someone walked into a studio and saw a 12-foot block of marble. And he asked the sculptor, who at the time was a guy named Michelangelo, "What the heck is it?" And he said, "It's the most beautiful statue you've ever seen." And the person in the room said, "It's a 12-foot block of marble." And he said, "Well, come back in a couple of years." And he did. And this was what came out of it. The Pieta, for those who don't recognize it. And they asked him, "How did you do that?" I mean, I just saw a 12-foot block of marble. He said, "Well," Michelangelo said, "Well, I saw the Pieta, and all I did was remove the stone around it." It's a big idea. Artists hear things and see things that normal people don't. You know, you and I, if we were in France in the 1890s, might have seen some guy sitting outside at night, getting dark, staring at a blank canvas. You would ask the same question. What do you see? You and I see a blank canvas. He said, "Come back in the morning." There was Van Gogh in Starry Night. And so, I tell you this, because here's the one thing I do know for sure, with apologies to any accountants in the room, but accountants don't run startups. Artists do. It's a big idea. For those of you who not only want to write code or build something, but actually want to start something, who want to be a founder of something, entrepreneurs and founders are artists. You see things that others don't. And this is a big idea. It's a big idea. If you think your job as an engineer is simply to create a piece of code, or build some hardware, or solve some small problem, congratulations, join the engineering team. There's nothing wrong with it. But if you want to be a founder of something, you'll see something that no one else sees. I think we could build an electric car. I think we could put people on Mars. I think something else that we haven't even thought of yet, but someone in this room is going to do, that other people will tell you they don't see, and more importantly, will laugh at you, tell you crazy, tell you why don't you get a real job, etc. When you hear that, shut out those voices. Because true artists see things that others don't. Because where others see limits, you see possibilities. Founders and artists just don't view the world the same way. When others fall on their face and treat failure as an end, screw it, I can't get up again. Founders have a very special word for failure. I'm going to tell you a personal version of this story. I did 8 startups in 21 years in Silicon Valley. Semiconductors, supercomputers, video games. Bot score at the end of my 21 years was 4 IPOs, but interestingly enough, the whole lean startup movement started out of the 2 craters I left. One of them so deep it had its own iridium layer. And the geologists in the room can explain that to the rest of you. It means I blew $35 million of other people's money. And in fact, I did that when I was on the cover of something called Wired magazine. Is Wired still around? Is that, yeah, okay. Yeah. We used to cut down dead trees to print it on ink. I think now you get it electronically. When I was on the cover, it was, you know, superstars, digital superstars, Silicon Valley. And 90 days after I was on the cover, I realized I was about to blow $35 million going out of business. And it did. And I called my mother, who was a Russian immigrant, and English was still never her first language, and so every time I would talk to her, I'd have to pause so she would do simultaneous translation in her head. And, you know, after the first 5 minutes of how come you don't call, and blah, 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 which I now do to my kids, I said, Mom, I lost $35 million. And she said, where'd you put it? I said, no, it's gone. I lost it completely. It's, you know, like, and then there was a much longer pause, and then she went, oh my God. The country we came from is gone. There's nowhere else for us to go. She was right, it was gone. And then she thought even more, and she said, and her name is blank, you can't even change it. And I said, no, the reason I'm calling you is the people who lost that money with me just gave me another $12 million to do my next startup. And the punchline to the story, there's two. One is the reason I'm up here is my last and final startup, I took that $12 million and returned $1 billion each to my two investors. But that's not a Steve Blank story. That's a story about entrepreneurship in the Bay Area, in the United States, and the enormous opportunity you have. Because we have a special word for a failed entrepreneur. Anybody know what that special word is? Anybody know what it is? Experience. It's a big idea. Entrepreneurs treat failure as experience. The odds of any of you who want to found a company knocking it out of the park and getting it right the first time, it doesn't happen like Facebook. Most of you will fail. Most of you will fail multiple times. And the test of what a true founder is you pick yourself up, you're depressed for a day or a week, and then you have coffee with your friend, and the first thing they'll say is, so what are you doing next? And if you can do that because you're driven because you see something others don't see. You have what it takes to be a founder. Now, how do we teach this stuff? I have to tell you, the other thing that happened to me is when I retired and decided to give back by teaching. My best friend, who was running the iPod division at Apple, John Rubinstein, laughed hysterically. He said, Steve, you were a born entrepreneur. You can't teach this stuff. And that question kind of stuck with me for a decade. Going, well, I am teaching this stuff, and why do I think I could teach it? And the answer is, well, the mistake we were making with entrepreneurship education is thinking we were teaching accountants. If you believe you're teaching artists, then we know how to teach artists. We've been teaching artists since the Renaissance. Some theory. An artist, we teach him how to mix color, we teach him about perspective, we teach him about composing or whatever, but lots of practice. Guess what you're going to do in the next 3 days? Welcome to 3 days of art school. So welcome to the hackathon, and thanks for being here, and founders are artists. So thank you guys.